The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Yeah, you're welcome along. Monday evening here on Off the Ball, and it seems somewhat out of nowhere, but the GPA and the GAA are now very much at odds with each other. The GPA CEO, Tom Parsons, will be with us at 7:30 to explain their side of the story. We did invite the GAA on as well, but they didn't put anybody forward for the conversation. But Tom Parsons with us 7:30, and certainly strike is not off the table. Record-winning margin at Twickenham. You'd think we would take that, but plenty of observers with reservations about the Irish performance. We'll talk to Jerry Thornley and Fiona Hayes. That's on Monday Night Rugby. And then Pat Nevin on the football show after 9. Situation at Chelsea, obviously up for discussion with Pat. We will talk about Arsenal Samba football and plenty more besides. There's live football this evening as well. 53106, the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Ronan Mullen here in studio. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
And Richie McCormack, you there?
Joe, how are you?
Very well. That is not to mention, Ronan, we had Michael Conlan Lee Wood fight, which didn't get much coverage in advance for various reasons. MTK links, I think, primarily, although it suddenly had a lot of coverage because it was an extraordinary fight, and thankfully Michael Conlan is fitting well again. We have also not mentioned the golf at TBC Sawgrass, which is continuing, a Monday finish. There was a wildness over the weekend to that golf, I can tell you. That's not to mention the Ronaldo hat-trick. That is not to mention the Ronaldo hat-trick convincing Tom Brady there's life in the old dog yet. Brady has unretired LFG.
Yeah, there was that Instagram post which did the rounds, various upshots of that little post-match huddle. Did you see it in the middle of the Old Trafford pitch with various players congregating around Tom Brady, literally looking up to him in some sort of awe? And there was a little moment that someone shared on Instagram where Ronaldo goes to Tom Brady, "You're finished, right?" And Brady goes, like a little shake of the head as if to say, really? "I'm not sure," or, you know,
I can see that. To
be continued. And then within 24 hours, as you said, inspired by Ronaldo's virtuoso display, Tom Brady says, "Let's have another crack at this."
Yeah. When I read his post and I saw LFG, I was like, "What's LFG?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah." And then, of course, there was Ralph Rangnick single-handedly trying to ruin journalism. He needs to figure out how this works pretty damn quickly. So after the win against Spurs, "Can you win the Champions League, Ralph?" And he gave all the wrong answers. On Sunday, he said, "I almost felt like we were at a funeral and that it was already dead. It was the end of the decade. I felt like it's the worst team I've ever coached. And after a win against Spurs, we're discussing whether or not we can win the Champions League." Ralph, that's how it works, Ralph. That's how we do things around here.
This United team seems to exude its most confidence when it's surrounded by chaos. In that game the other day, there was next to no midfield play whatsoever. It was just end-to-end basketball style. And do you know, if United can somehow get themselves into that sphere of competition in the Champions League, like I get this impression it'll be a tense affair tomorrow night. But Champions League football, it is cup football, Joe, so you know, things can happen, freaky things can happen, but there are some stacked teams in that draw, and I don't think the likes of Man City or Liverpool on this season's form will be too concerned about the prospect of Man United in the quarterfinals, should they get there.
No, I wouldn't think so. We do have a lot to get through, so we might just start the news round because we want to make some time for Tom Parsons. It is brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Richie, I mentioned we have a Monday finish at the Players' Championship over in Florida.
Yeah, Shane Lowry had looked like he'd played himself into contention there at Sawgrass. He finished up with a third round 67 earlier today, as you say, the weather causing havoc at Sawgrass across the weekend. So Lowry was 6 under par at the end of his third round and 3 shots off Anirban Lahiri. Things have gone a bit skew-iff for Lowry since then. 2 bogeys in his opening 6 holes saw him drop back to 4 under par. He's now moved back with 8 holes played today to 5 under, but he is a long ways away from Cameron Smith, who's the new course leader. The Aussie has picked up 4 shots from his opening 7 holes, and he is 11 under par and holds a 1-shot lead over Lahiri. Seamus Power, though, has given himself a decent chance of a good finish and a good final paycheck there. He started early on his 4th round earlier today, and he has 5 holes remaining. He's now 4 under par, so just a shot behind Lowry. Rory McIlroy started off on 3 over. He's picked up 4 shots from his opening 8 holes today, and he is 1 under par, but those 3 consecutive rounds of 73 have really scuppered his progress so far this week, John.
Yeah, it does feel as if this tournament's been going on for about 8 weeks at this stage. So thankfully they're going to finish this evening. It was absolutely incredible over the weekend. The famous 17th at Sawgrass is a par 3 surrounded by water, and for much of Saturday they were playing this into the wind, and none of the players could pick the right club or even find the right ball flight to, which was surprising, the latter point, the right ball flight to counter the wind, I suppose, and all hell broke loose. I mean, water shot after water shot after water shot. It was quite extraordinary. And well, then Shane Lowry popped up last night with a hole in one, admittedly in calmer conditions, but yeah, it was a pretty interesting weekend of golf. So we'll chat about that in Golf Weekly later on in the week. So we do have Manchester City in action this evening. Obviously Liverpool played on the Saturday. We also have football here at home, Rich.
Yeah, full programme across both divisions tonight, and a pair of Dublin derbies in the SSE Electricity Premier Division. Damien Duff takes his Shelbourne side to Dalymount to face their future co-tenants Bohemians, while St Pat's host UCD at Richmond Park. The early leaders Shamrock Rovers are away to Dundalk this evening, and there's a Northwest derby at the Showgrounds where Sligo Rovers face Finn Harps. Meanwhile, Derry City welcome Drogheda United to the Ryan McBride. Brandywell early First Division leaders Waterford, they're away to Cork, while Galway play Treaty United. Athlone face Cove Ramblers, and Longford Town take on Bray. And as you mentioned, Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola says tonight's match against Crystal Palace is the start of the club's run-in to be crowned Premier League champions once again. They can re-establish a 6-point lead at the top with a win at Selhurst Park. Kick-off there is at 8 o'clock.
So we'll keep you updated across the evening. Now, the James Ryan situation, obviously a big concern for Ireland, made it very bittersweet afternoon at Twickenham. What's the latest, Rich?
Yeah, he's going to undergo return to play protocols at Leinster, having been ruled out of Saturday's Six Nations finale with Scotland. He was taken off following that blow to the head early in the win over England at Twickenham. A back problem has seen Ulster's Ryan Baird also ruled out of the Scotland game, so the uncapped Leinster duo of Ross Maloney and Joe McCarthy will train with the Ireland squad this week. Scotland, for their part, have called up 2 uncapped players, with Glasgow prop Murphy Walker and Scotland Sevens winger Jordan Edmonds joining Gregor Townsend's squad. Fraser Brown and Scott Cummings also joined their panel, and on this morning's OTB AM, Alan Quinlan addressed the problems posed by Ireland's malfunctioning scrum at Twickenham.
There was probably 2 out of 6 were penalty signals. 2 or 3 of them could have been penalties to Ireland, and there was certainly one of them that was just should have been reset. I haven't got the pictures here to show you and show the viewers and show you the angles, but England were pushing after the ball, after the engagement in every scrum. They were crabbing to the left and then running around the corner. Like, it's very, very hard to do anything about that from an Irish point of view. That's never happened to Tadhg Furlong before. There's nothing he could have done. Genge was running around the corner, and then Tom Curry or the other flankers were sliding up the side, and he was getting shoulders into the side of the ribs. So I thought Matthew Reynal, it's hard when it happens. It's hard to change it.
It's amazing, really, to watch the various analyses. I don't know the word is there, Ronan. Post-match sees, yeah. Nigel Owens, for instance, he was writing in the Telegraph yesterday, and he was saying that of the 6 consecutive penalties, he would have had it maybe 4-2, potentially even 3-3. For Matthew Reynal to go 6-0 and be at odds with most observers, actually, it just shows like nobody has a clue what's going on in that department of the game most of the time.
100%, and that's that latter point. Like, former players come in here on the regular, and they will almost put their hands up and say if they haven't competed in a scrum, it's almost like a foreign sport altogether. So, what I can sense on a strictly superficial level is that when a sense of momentum goes with one team in that department, the referee does tend to favour them. But as you discussed on the Sunday pay-per-view yesterday, it did seem to be a lot more parity in what was going on there, and yet the referee was leaning wholly in England's way. I don't know, was there a sense of trying to even the score for what happened in the first minute? But that was such an isolated incident of clear red card proportions. It wasn't as if it was a touch and go incident. He had no choice on that matter. So, like, often a team that dominates the scrum to that end would win the game. And in the fallout from this, and it seems anathema for Irish rugby fans to be able to just embrace a game or a result in isolation without having to contextualise it in the context of
until the World Cup is won.
Yeah. It's like, how did that compare to what we did in Japan? Will that be enough next year?
It is a bit tiring, actually. It doesn't seem like we're allowed joy and enjoy as fans, for instance. Speaking for fans, I guess journalism's slightly different because I'm watching it with a pen and paper, a bit more with questions. But it seems like it's this constant, all that matters in this entire sport is every 4 years. That's no way to live your life, Richie.
No, it's a strange old one. But I don't know if every other country lives it the same way that we do. I certainly don't think England do. England are able to pause after a World Cup, usually after reaching a semi-final or a final, to be fair, and then reset and gather again. Whereas, like with Ireland, it seems to be the focus from the minute we're booted out of one World Cup to getting to the next one. And perhaps it'll take just getting to a semi-final and actually fulfilling, decades worth of promise for that cycle to be actually broken. But until it actually happens, we're going to be stuck here where we're thinking, this is all fine, but how are we going to do in 2 years' time, and how are we going to do in a year and a half's time? Where everything almost seems in the moment as if it's not worthless, but it's certainly just a stepping stone. Everyone else seems to manage it a little bit better.
Although Eddie Jones going for the
semi-finals more than us.
Eddie Jones going for the interesting option of playing terrible rugby in non-World Cup years and just saying, well, that's just what has to happen. 5th last year and another dreadful effort this year, and all he says is it's going to be fine for the World Cup. So they're coming at it from a completely different angle. Anyway, we'll talk to Fiona Hayes and Jerry Thornley after 8. So the Chelsea situation, I suspect Chelsea is going to be a feature of your news rounds for weeks and months to come.
Yeah.
What's the latest?
It seems so, at least. Anyway, the Premier League and the Football Association are in discussions with the UK government over sporting integrity issues created by Chelsea's ticket sale ban. The clubs say it is pressing for supporters to be allowed access to tickets. Chelsea are operating under a licence which prevents the club generating any new revenue due to the sanctioning of their Russian owner, Roman Abramovich. It's expected also they'll lobby the UK government there for further travel expenditure and make claims that the £20,000 limit is not enough to cover their FA Cup 6th round trip to Middlesbrough this weekend.
I mean, it's funny. I said to Pat Nevin last week, Ronan, we didn't get around to Chelsea. We'll talk next week. And, I mean, a week is akin to a decade at the moment.
Yeah, ever-evolving situation. And, there was so many talking points from that game, from a footballing perspective. The non-decisions that the referee made, Kai Havertz's otherworldly goal, and yet the backdrop it pollutes everything that goes on at that football club at the moment, and they couldn't have had much more toxic dance partners in the sense that what's going on at Newcastle similarly, and how Eddie Howe dealt with, or rather more didn't deal with, questions he was asked after the fact. And we were having a conversation possibly last Monday about the responsibility on managers as the front-facing component of these football clubs to field these questions, but they better get used to it, because press conferences every 3 days, this is all anybody's going to be talking about.
Oh, well, like Eddie Howe just doesn't know what to do at the moment. At least Tuchel has the increasing latitude of an absent Roman Abramovich, but Eddie Howe at the weekend, 81 executions over the weekend. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on Yemen? He doesn't want to go there, Richie. I don't see the question stopping for the foreseeable.
Yeah, the more Eddie Howe performs as he did in that press conference yesterday, there will be more calls to actually answer these questions. And there is, I'm not going to say a duty upon him, but you can understand where people are coming from, because the upper echelons at Newcastle are very much connected to the fact that there was 81 people publicly executed over the weekend, the highest public execution number, I think, in the state's history over there in Saudi Arabia. Also, the ongoing war in Yemen. And yet the money that's funding both of those actions is also funding Chris Wood and Isaac Hayden and Martin Dubravka and Eddie Howe. So you can understand why he will be asked these questions, and probably needs to come up with a better answer than, well, I just want to talk about footballing matters, because the same paychecks are coming from the same people. And that becomes an Eddie Howe matter then. But it hits on something that was brought up when Tuchel addressed similar questions last week, is that in other countries, in the likes of Italy, you've got, say, Juventus of Pavel Nedved, who'll field these kind of questions. You've got sporting directors like Hasan Salihamidzic at Bayern Munich, who'll cover the issues that are not pertaining to the football field. So their coaches are spared, being asked about stuff that, to be fair, they probably don't know a lot about. Yeah. Which is the reality of it. They probably aren't, on top of what's actually going on in Yemen, or what's actually going on in Saudi Arabia or in Ukraine, wherever. So they do have these sporting directors whose job it is to talk about everything to do with the club and to field these issues. And Eddie Howe would be, and Newcastle have been slow to appoint one, and we've talked before about, just in terms of their signing players, that they needed somebody with a bit of a footballing head and a sporting director who knew what they were doing to deal with the kind of money that they're now dealing with. They now need somebody who can deal with the PR aspect of being a sporting director and being involved in a big Premier League club with big Saudi money behind them.
Yeah. I mean, it's very difficult for him as well, short of quitting. And I don't know if anybody feels he should quit, but maybe some people are especially moral in this point and feel he should. But short of quitting, once he gets into explaining, he's really losing in this issue. Like, do we want Eddie Howe to start saying, well, I don't know much about the 82 executions, because I don't think any of the three of us do either. I don't know on what charges. But do we want Eddie Howe to start saying, well, there's capital punishment in 27 states in the US. Why is that okay? And it's not okay in Saudi Arabia. Why are British government, successive British governments, supplying weapons to Saudi Arabia, allies with Saudi Arabia, US are allies with Saudi Arabia? Why don't you go and talk to Boris Johnson? He's heading to Riyadh, I think, this week in a bid to up the supply of oil. You know, any number of points he could make which are valid. But like, if he starts going down that territory, I mean, turn around to the journalists. How many of you are wearing clothes which were made in a sweatshop? You know, who here wants to cast the first stone? Who here is perfect?
Like, there have been...
They're not totally invalid points, but like, if he goes down that route, it's an absolute catastrophe for him. You know, he just ends up into really weird territory. So I don't know what, if he was to say, what do you think I should do? I'd say, I actually don't know. I mean, sure, the only way to obviously make it go away is to walk away from the job, but I don't think anyone expects him to do that.
I know it's the job of, you know, columnists and commenters to possibly, you know, take the alternative view, and some people have been making the whataboutery point about extrapolating like this, like to what point do we go where every manager's asked about foreign policy depending on the given owner of a given club, but what separates this situation at Newcastle and the one at Chelsea is the direct involvement of the social issues in question. You know, the Saudi issue is, like, as Richie said, directly linked to the ownership, and couldn't be any more so in the Chelsea case, where Abramovich is the one under fire. So,
I think the questions are valid.
Totally.
Just don't know if it's Eddie Howe who should have to answer them. And like, where does that end? Do you think that if...
Well, like, there's no sense that Klopp is going to be asked about American foreign policy given the American owners. It's a totally different case. But like, I can't see, as you said, every press conference is going to be leading with this, and this is in the context of Newcastle somewhat turning the ship around from a footballing point of view. And if all things were equal, Eddie Howe would be getting plaudits for keeping them up from a point of, you know, it looked like they were about to go down. But who can even fathom talking about those kinds of issues when this other stuff is happening?
So, Rich, where do you want to bring us?
Out west, Connacht have plundered Super Rugby again for another Irish qualified back. Byron Ralston will join the province from Western Force, where he's played both on the wing and at outside centre. Of late, Ralston could follow in the footsteps of Mac Hansen, who is an Ireland international within months of a move from Australia, and indeed the Brumbies in particular. Oh,
does he also drink at the bar where Andy Friend's son works?
I'm not too sure, but like the echoes are very evident of this guy's Irish qualified as well. But do you know what? Connacht have actually engaged in, like, I can't speak to Ralston all that much, but Connacht have engaged in some really canny recruitment over the last week or so. When you factor in Dooley and Adam Byrne looks like a player who's just been waiting for the right opportunity to come his way, and such as the traffic at Leinster, I don't think it was ever going to come there. But for Connacht to get somebody like Adam Byrne and deploy him in the wing as often as possible, and then have somebody like Ralston who can play in the other wing or in the centre, along with Mac Hansen, like, suddenly they're a very exciting looking team next year. Not that they're not already, but there's an extra bit of something about them come next term, and that will only add to it. If you can instill a bit of consistency in Connacht, then anything is achievable over there.
Probably victims of their own success. They may well have gone to the RFU and said, here, you're taking Mac Hansen every week now. Give us a few quid to get someone in. So Michael Conlan is, well, primarily his health is good, which was the concern on Saturday evening when he went to hospital.
Yeah, he kept saying everybody else was worried I was grand, but Michael Conlan says he wants a rematch with Lee Woods. The 2012 Olympic silver medalist was knocked out, and indeed out of the ring in the final round of their WBA World Featherweight title bout in Nottingham on Saturday night. Conlan was taken to hospital for scans, but spent Saturday night back in his hotel room. Wood is looking to fight Leo Santa Cruz next, but a defiant Conlan says he'll return to Nottingham in search of a rematch with Wood, saying he'll even fight him at the City Ground if needs be.
Ronan, you watched this live. I suspect a lot of people came to this via social media when Conlan had been brought to hospital, and the sense was he was going to be okay, but nobody was quite sure at that stage. And then there were the shots of obviously the knockout where He's knocked out of the ring, in effect. It looks at first glance, I know there was a punch, but it looked at first glance as almost if he just collapsed inward on himself, almost fatigue gripping him in the final round, and he was knocked out of the ring, and there's a big old gap from ring to floor, and so his head went down, feet went up in the air, reverse somersault, and a chilling image in light of the fact he'd been brought to hospital. Now, thankfully, all is okay. It seemed to be an extraordinary fight as well.
Yeah, like as you said, it looked quite grave at the time, and to what extent we were going to contextualise it as a sporting event, which, as you're saying there, from a boxing point of view, it'll go down in the annals as one of the all-time classic fights in a British ring, and people have been going further afield to that end, saying one of the greatest fights of all time. But off the back of that ending, I was somewhat hesitant to go to those points when someone's health is in question, and thankfully, as Richie said, it was a bit more swift in the messaging that was coming out. It went from he's gone for checkups to the next morning posting videos from his hotel room, doing interviews, calling for a rematch. So we can kind of maybe look at it through those lenses now and say a rematch would be great. Like at DAZN and Matchroom put up a poll to see who they'd like Lee Wood to face next, and there's endless candidates for a potential fight at the Nottingham Forest ground, and Michael Conlan actually wasn't on that list, but all the commenters underneath were calling for a rematch. So it's definitely in the public domain, and Lee Wood, who was something of an also-ran fighter through his 20s, has really come on leaps and bounds in the last couple of years, is now a household name in Britain. So that would be a massive fight, and Conlan would fancy his chances of winning a rematch. Like, he was up on all cards heading into that final round, and if this was an 11-round fight, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be talking about Ireland's new world champion. But power was always an issue with Michael Conlan. He doesn't have it to the extent of some of his predecessors in the featherweight division, so it was always going to be skills to pay the bills if he was going to be a world champion, and he just didn't quite have enough in the tank to get over the line.
One of those sports where there's a kind of a chilling reminder, like an instant sobering up for everybody of what's actually going on here.
Yeah, totally. And I think we touched on this in the news round yesterday, that you're so almost desensitized to it if you watch the fights every weekend or every day, and you're picking out the intricate details of what the tactics are from the corner and what each fighter's doing, southpaw versus orthodox, in the same way you go into the minutiae of any sport, like we were talking about the scrum earlier. But when things are pared back to the actual sole object of the sport and what it can ultimately boil down to, it gives you cause for pause. And that was certainly, and my friends and people I talked about on Saturday night, as much as we champion the sport, there are these things that they're drawbacks, and in some ways they're drawbacks, but they're also the key kernel of what we're actually watching. Yeah. And you need reminders every now and then.
Yeah, for sure. So Richie, LFG.
Yeah, Tom Brady has pulled a George Costanza. The 7-time Super Bowl winner Tom Brady has backtracked on his decision to retire from the NFL. He's confirmed his intention to return in 2022. In a statement on Twitter, Brady says he's realised his place is still on the field and not in the stands. As you mentioned there, he was at Old Trafford on Saturday to watch Manchester United beat Tottenham. And frankly, who hasn't, after a few weeks of saying they want to spend time with the family, suddenly decides they want back in the real world?
I know. I wonder if Tom Brady's supportive family are seeing this decision in the same way. So it was not a surprise. You couldn't say it's a surprise when he retired, but there was definitely a sense saying, he's playing just fine. Yeah. He doesn't need to go here from a performance point of view. Fair enough if mentally he's done, but physically and performance-wise, there was still enough in the tank to go again. Yeah,
he was setting league high standards in various departments, and obviously holds the bulk of the records for quarterback play in the history of the game. And I know it's become a little bit more quarterback friendly. Quarterbacks don't get hit as much as they did maybe 10 years ago, so there is a sense that he could have continued, but he played so well in that losing playoff effort that you're like, this is actually quite a nice time for him to bow out. He doesn't look like he's on the slide in the same way maybe Ben Roethlisberger was on his last legs in the season just gone. He retired. Peyton Manning, when he won his final Super Bowl, was really on his last legs, but Brady was going out with a little bit left. Now he's going out. He's coming back with the Tampa Bay Bucks. There was some speculation that he might try and engineer a move to another franchise like his boyhood San Francisco 49ers. Wouldn't necessarily put that off the table yet. We'll probably discuss it more at length during the week, but Bruce Arians, is the coach at Tampa Bay, has been saying some very odd things about Tom Brady in the off season, so I'm not sure if it's so harmonious there at the moment.
A few texts. Good evening, lads. Into 53106. I can't understand why there's negativity about Ireland's win in Twickenham. It was a cauldron of noise, very pumped up English team, and we managed to turn it around when a lot of teams would have folded. It will stand to us come the World Cup, says Mike. Yeah, I do take the point, Mike. Hi, Joe. The negativity around Ireland's win is crazy. Scrum badly reffed, giving England a huge edge, and we overplayed our running game. That is true. I think there were 17 turnovers in total, which is a work in progress, says John. Fact is, it's a massive step up for a young team, and they showed real resolve and calm, playing some scintillating rugby and setting us up for a shot at 2 trophies. New Zealand and England downed. Lots of work to do. I think they're very fair texts. Ireland are playing amazing rugby. I mean, I take the point at times they were throwing passes that shouldn't have been thrown, but when you're embracing this style of rugby and you're bringing it to somewhere like Twickenham for the first time, there's always the chance that could happen. And man, when it works, it really works. There's times you're watching Ireland going, geez, we are class. Like, we're really bloody good. As opposed to England, who refused to pass, refused to run the ball, kicked, and played the most rudimentary, basic game plan you could ever imagine. So, I think far more positives. It's amazing this is actually a take. More positives about Ireland's record-breaking win at Twickenham than negatives, I would say. One last one, very quickly. Lads, you forgot the real story of the weekend. The Dubs are back. Were they ever away, says Tony? Well, they were for 4 matches. They're back now.
They're back now, and we were wondering who's going to step up for this new look Dublin. It turned out they were all going to step up. The spread of scores in the first half was quite impressive, and if they could become that sort of multifaceted unit where scores from all over the field like they had been, it bodes well. And like, to what extent that result at the weekend reflects more in Tyrone than it does in Dublin, we'll need a bigger picture to have a look at that. But it's definitely an improvement on what we had been saying in previous weeks.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, guys, we're out of time. Ronan, Mullen, thank you very much.
Cheers, Joe.
Richie McCormack, I'll chat to you tomorrow. Thanks, Rich.
Nice, lads.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
Now, I think